He found a small girl trembling in the hayloft, clutching a torn doll to her chest. Then she grabbed his hand and whispered words that stopped his heart cold. "Mama's bleeding outside in the snow, late autumn, 1886, Colorado Territory, just east of the Rockies." The aspens had already shed their gold, leaving skeletal branches that clawed at a sky heavy with the promise of snow. The wind carried a bite that spoke of winter's arrival. Sweeping down from the high peaks and across the rolling foothills where ponderosa pines stood dark against the fading light, Marcus Redwing moved through the forest with the silence his grandfather had taught him. A Choctaw skill passed down through generations even here, far from the old homelands in the south. At 38, his face carried the weathering of a man who lived between two worlds. The traditional ways of his mother's people and the harsh realities of frontier Colorado. His rifle rested easy in his hands, and his eyes tracked the deer trail that wound between the trees. He'd been tracking a buck for the better part of 2 hours, following sign through the underbrush and across rocky ground. The animal was close now, maybe just beyond the next ridge. But something made him pause. A sound that didn't belong to the forest, faint and out of place. A whimper, high and frightened, carried on the wind. Marcus lowered his rifle and listened. There it was again, coming from the direction of the old Brennan place. An abandoned homestead that had sat empty for 3 years since the family had packed up and headed back east. The barn still stood, though the roof sagged and the doors hung crooked on rusted hinges. He changed direction, moving toward the sound with careful steps. His boots made almost no noise on the carpet of pine needles and fallen leaves. As he approached the clearing where the barn stood, he noticed fresh tracks in the dirt. Small footprints, a child's, running in panic. They led straight to the barn door. Marcus pushed the door open slowly. The hinges screamed in protest, and he winced at the noise. Inside, the barn was dim and cold, smelling of old hay and rotting wood. Dust motes danced in the thin shafts of light that pierced through gaps in the walls. He stood still, letting his eyes adjust. Then he heard it clearly. Breathing, fast and shallow, coming from above. He looked up at the hayloft, barely visible in the shadows. A ladder leaned against the edge, half its rungs broken or missing. Marcus set his rifle down carefully and spoke in a low, calm voice. "I'm not here to hurt you. My name is Marcus. Are you in trouble?" Silence. Then a small sound, like a stifled sob. He waited, patient. His grandfather had taught him that rushing frightened creatures only made them run farther. Finally, a tiny voice drifted down from the darkness above. "Don't come up here. I got a weapon." Marcus almost smiled despite himself. The voice belonged to a child, no more than 5 or 6 years old, trying to sound brave. "All right. I won't come up. But it's getting cold, and you sound scared. Can you tell me your name?" Another long pause. Then quieter. Clara, that's a pretty name." "Clara, are you alone?" "No. Mama's here too. She told me to hide. She said bad men might come looking." Marcus felt his chest tighten. Bad men. He knew what that meant in this territory. Too many men thought they could do whatever they wanted, take whatever they pleased, and the law was too far away or too corrupt to stop them. "Where's your mama now, Clara?" The little girl's voice cracked. "Outside, in the trees. She's bleeding real bad. She told me to run and hide, but I can't leave her." "I can't." Marcus didn't hesitate. "I'm going to look for her right now. Can you stay here and stay quiet until I come back? You promise you'll help her? You promise you won't hurt us? I promise on my daughter's life. I have a little girl too, about your age. I would want someone to help her if she needed it." A small shape appeared at the edge of the loft. Clara's face was pale, streaked with dirt and tears. Her dress was torn at the shoulder, and she clutched a ragged cloth doll against her chest. In her other hand, she held a rusty nail file, pointing it down at him like a knife. Her eyes were wide with fear, but also with something else. Defiance. This child had learned to fight. Marcus met her gaze and nodded once, then turned and walked quickly back outside. The wind had picked up, and the first flakes of snow were beginning to fall. He scanned the tree line, looking for any sign of movement or tracks. There, leading away from the barn toward the north, a trail of disturbed leaves and broken branches. And something else. Dark drops in the dirt. Blood. He followed the trail into the trees, moving faster now. The blood drops grew more frequent, larger. Whoever had made this trail was badly hurt. Marcus pushed through a stand of juniper and stopped. A woman lay crumpled at the base of an old cottonwood, half hidden by tall grass. Her dress was dark with blood across her left side, and her face was ashen. Her eyes were closed, her breathing shallow and labored. She couldn't have been more than 28, with light brown hair that had come loose from its pins and fell across her face. Marcus dropped to his knees beside her and gently touched her shoulder. "Ma'am, can you hear me? I'm here to help." Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then sharpening with sudden panic. She tried to push herself up, tried to move away, but her strength was gone. She gasped in pain and fell back. "Clara. Where's Clara? Did they find her? She's safe." "She's in the barn. I'm going to take you to her, but I need to stop this bleeding first." The woman's eyes filled with tears. She reached out and gripped Marcus's wrist with surprising strength. "Don't let him find us, please. He'll kill me this time." He said he would. Marcus pulled off his coat and pressed it against her side, where the blood was seeping through her dress. The wound looked like a knife cut, deep and vicious. "No one's going to hurt you. I give you my word." "What's your name, Carolyn?" "Carolyn Hayes." "All right, Carolyn. I'm going to lift you now. It's going to hurt, but we need to get you somewhere warm. My cabin isn't far." He slid his arms beneath her as gently as he could, but she still cried out in pain. Her head fell against his shoulder, and he could feel her trembling. Marcus stood carefully, adjusting his grip, and began walking back toward the barn. The snow was falling harder now, coating the ground in white. When he reached the barn, he called up to the loft, "Clara, I found your mama. I'm taking her somewhere safe, and you're coming with us. Can you climb down?" The little girl appeared at the edge again, and when she saw her mother in Marcus's arms, she scrambled down the ladder so fast she nearly fell. She ran to them, reaching up to touch Caroline's face. "Mama, Mama, wake up." Caroline's eyes opened briefly. "Baby, you did good. You stayed hidden. I was so scared." There was so much blood. Marcus shifted Caroline's weight. "We need to move. Can you walk, Clara? Or do you need me to carry you too?" "I can walk." "I'm a big girl. Then stay close to me and don't fall behind. We're going to my cabin. It's about a mile through the woods." The journey was slow and difficult. The snow fell thicker with every passing minute, covering the trail and making the footing treacherous. Carolyn drifted in and out of consciousness, her breathing growing more labored. Clara trudged beside Marcus, never complaining, though he could see she was exhausted. Her little legs struggled through the deepening snow. When they finally emerged into the clearing where Marcus's cabin stood, smoke rising from the chimney, a small figure appeared in the doorway. A girl of about 9, with long black hair in 2 braids and dark eyes that widened at the sight of her father carrying a bleeding woman. "Papa, what happened?" "Morning Star, I need you to boil water. Lots of it. And get the medicine box from the shelf. Hurry." The girl disappeared inside without another word. Marcus carried Carolyn through the door into the warmth of the cabin. A fire burned in the stone hearth, casting flickering light across the simple room. Hand-woven rugs covered the floor, and dried herbs hung from the rafters. He laid Carolyn carefully on his own bed near the fire. Clara stood in the doorway, shivering, her eyes locked on her mother. Morning Star returned with a pot and set it over the fire, then brought the wooden medicine box to her father. She glanced at Clara with curiosity but said nothing. Marcus pulled his hunting knife and cut away the blood-soaked fabric of Caroline's dress, exposing the wound. It was worse than he'd thought. A deep slash across her ribs, the edges ragged. It would need stitching, and soon, or she'd bleed out before morning. Morning Star, take Clara to the other room. Get her some dry clothes and something warm to drink. Keep her there until I'm finished. His daughter nodded and held out her hand to Clara. The little girl hesitated, looking back at her mother. Caroline managed to lift her hand slightly. Go on, baby. I'll be right here. Clara took Morning Star's hand, and the two girls disappeared into the back room. Marcus heard the older girl speaking softly, her voice gentle and reassuring. He turned his attention back to Caroline. He cleaned the wound with warm water, then reached for the needle and thread he kept in the medicine box. His hands were steady as he began to stitch, working quickly but carefully. Caroline whimpered in pain but didn't wake fully. When he finished, he bandaged the wound with clean cloth and covered her with thick blankets. Her color was still pale, her breathing still weak, but the bleeding had stopped. That was something. Whether she'd survive the night depended on things beyond his control now. Infection, fever, how much blood she'd already lost. All he could do was wait. He washed his hands and went to check on the girls. In the small back room, he found Morning Star sitting on the floor with Clara wrapped in a woolen blanket. The younger girl clutched her doll and sipped from a cup of warm broth. Morning Star had braided Clara's tangled hair and wiped the dirt from her face. Marcus knelt down beside them. Clara, your mama is resting now. I stitched up her wound, and she's warm. That's all we can do tonight. Is she going to die? The question hung in the air. Marcus wanted to lie, to promise everything would be fine. But he'd never lied to Morning Star, and he wouldn't start now with this frightened child. I don't know. But I've done everything I can to help her. Sometimes that's enough. Clara's lower lip trembled, but she nodded. You're a good man. Mama said most men aren't. She said most of them just take and take until there's nothing left. Marcus felt a cold anger settle in his chest. He had a good idea who had done this to Caroline and her daughter, and why they'd been running through the woods in the cold. Some man who thought he owned them. Some man who'd rather kill than let them go. Morning Star spoke up quietly. Papa, can they stay with us? Marcus looked at his daughter. Then at the small girl huddled in the blanket. Then back toward the main room where Caroline lay fighting for her life. Yes, they can stay as long as they need to. That night, Marcus sat in the rocking chair beside the bed, watching Caroline's chest rise and fall. The fire burned low, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Outside, the wind howled and the snow continued to fall, covering the world in white silence. In the back room, the two girls slept curled together under quilts, safe and warm. Marcus didn't sleep. He kept watch through the long hours of darkness, listening to Caroline's breathing, checking her forehead for fever, changing the bandage when blood seeped through. Toward dawn, her eyes opened. She looked around the unfamiliar room, confused at first. Then her gaze found him. You stayed. Someone had to make sure you kept breathing. A tear slid down her temple. Why would you help us? You don't even know us. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, 3 years ago, my wife died bringing our son into the world. The baby died too. I know what it's like to feel helpless. To watch someone slip away and not be able to stop it. If I can stop it this time, I will. Caroline's hand moved slightly on the blanket. Marcus reached out and covered it with his own. Her fingers were cold, but growing warmer. I'm sorry for your loss, and I'm sorry for whatever brought you to that barn. They sat in silence as the first light of dawn crept through the window, painting the room in shades of gray and gold. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving behind a world transformed. Fresh snow covered everything, pristine and unmarked. A new beginning, if they were strong enough to take it. Caroline's voice came again, barely a whisper. His name is Vincent Hayes. He's my husband. Was my husband. I don't know anymore. He owns the big ranch 10 miles south of here, near Canyon Creek. Everyone knows him. Everyone respects him. They don't know what he's like behind closed doors. Marcus squeezed her hand gently. You don't have to talk about it now. Yes, I do. Because he'll come looking. He won't let me go. Not alive. He told me that. Then he'll have to go through me first. Caroline turned her head to look at him fully. Her eyes were glassy with fever, but filled with something else, too. Gratitude mixed with disbelief, as if kindness was a language she'd forgotten how to understand. You don't know what you're saying. Vincent has men. He has money. He has the sheriff in his pocket. You're just one man. Marcus's jaw tightened. One man is enough if he's standing in the right place. Before Caroline could respond, a small voice came from the doorway. Morning Star stood there in her nightgown, her face serious beyond her years. Papa never breaks his promises. If he says he'll protect you, he will. Marcus looked at his daughter, pride swelling in his chest. Morning Star had seen hardship too. She'd watched her mother die, watched her baby brother take his last breath. She knew what loss felt like, and she knew her father would move mountains to prevent it from happening again. Come here, little one. Caroline's voice was weak but warm. Morning Star approached the bed shyly. Caroline managed a small smile. What's your name, Morning Star? My mother gave it to me because I was born just before dawn. That's beautiful. Thank you for taking care of Clara last night. She was so frightened. She's brave, though. She told me she protected you with a nail file. Caroline's eyes filled with tears again. She's had to be brave too many times. No child should have to be that strong. Marcus stood and moved to the window, looking out at the snow-covered landscape. The sun was rising now, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. Somewhere out there, Vincent Hayes was probably just waking up, discovering his wife and daughter were gone. The man would be furious, dangerous, but Marcus had faced dangerous men before. Morning Star, go wake Clara and get some breakfast started. Cornmeal mush and whatever berries are left in the jar. His daughter nodded and disappeared into the back room. Marcus heard whispers, then the sound of small feet padding across the floor. He turned back to Caroline. You need to rest now. Build your strength. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. Caroline's eyes were already closing, exhaustion pulling her under. But before sleep claimed her completely, she whispered one more thing. Thank you. For seeing us. For not turning away. Marcus watched her drift off, then stepped outside into the cold morning air. The world was silent under its blanket of snow, peaceful and still. But he knew that peace wouldn't last. Storm clouds were gathering on the horizon, and they had nothing to do with the weather. He walked to the edge of the clearing and looked south, toward Canyon Creek, toward the Hayes Ranch, toward the man who had put that knife wound in Caroline's side and that terror in little Clara's eyes. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. He'd spent 3 years trying to outrun his grief, trying to find purpose in a world that had taken everything he loved. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was why he'd been in those woods yesterday. Why he'd heard that small, frightened whimper carried on the wind. Behind him, he heard laughter. Clara's voice, high and clear, mixing with Morning Star's deeper tones. The sound of children playing, safe and warm. That was worth fighting for. That was worth everything. Marcus took a deep breath of the cold air and made a silent promise to the rising sun. Vincent Hayes would not take this from them. Not this time. Not ever. The fever came on the second day. Caroline's skin burned hot to the touch, and she thrashed beneath the blankets, crying out in her sleep. Marcus kept cool cloths on her forehead, changing them every few minutes as they grew warm. He brewed willow bark tea for the pain and fever, forcing small sips between her cracked lips when she was lucid enough to swallow. Morning Star and Clara sat in the corner by the hearth, watching with wide, worried eyes. The older girl had taken the younger one under her wing completely, keeping her occupied with simple tasks. Folding cloth, sorting dried beans. Anything to keep Clara's mind off her mother's suffering. On the third morning, Marcus woke in his chair to find Clara standing beside Caroline's bed, holding her mother's hand. The little girl's face was streaked with tears, but she wasn't making a sound. Just standing there, silent and small, bearing witness to her mother's pain, Marcus rose quietly and knelt beside her. She's strong. She's fighting hard. Clara didn't look at him. What if fighting isn't enough? What if she leaves me like Papa did? Your papa died, yes. The cholera took him 2 years ago. Mama said it was a blessing because he was kind. She said at least I got to know one good man before the world showed me all the bad ones. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. This child, barely 5 years old, already understood the cruelty of the world in ways no child should. Then you came to live with Vincent. Mama had to marry him. We had no money, no place to go. She thought he'd take care of us. Clara's voice dropped to a whisper. But he wasn't kind like Papa. He hurt Mama. He said terrible things. And when I cried, he locked me in the cellar. Marcus's hands clenched. How long were you with him? Almost a year. But 3 days ago, Mama fought back. He came home angry about something, started yelling. When he grabbed her, she pushed him down the stairs. Then she took his knife and she took me, and we ran. The pieces fell into place. Vincent Hayes hadn't just lost his wife. She'd humiliated him, fought back, escaped. A man like that wouldn't let it stand. His pride would demand revenge. That afternoon, while Caroline slept more peacefully, Marcus took both girls outside. The snow had melted in patches, revealing brown grass and mud beneath. He taught them how to identify animal tracks in the remaining snow. Deer, rabbit, fox. Morning Star already knew most of it, but she played along, letting Clara discover each print with delight. Look, this one's tiny. What made it? Marcus knelt down. Field mouse. See how the tail drags between the prints? Clara traced the trail with her finger, following it to where it disappeared under a log. Can we see the mouse? He's sleeping now. Mice are smart. They hide during the day when hawks are hunting. Like Mama hid me in the barn, exactly like that. They walked to the creek, frozen at the edges but still running clear in the middle. Marcus showed them how to break the ice without cutting themselves, how to spot where fish waded in the deeper pools. Morning Star caught his eye and smiled. She understood what he was doing. Giving Clara moments of childhood, of wonder, of safety. That evening, Marcus prepared a stew from dried venison and root vegetables. The cabin filled with the rich smell of cooking meat and herbs. Morning Star set the table with careful precision while Clara arranged wildflowers she'd found in a small cup. Simple gestures, but they spoke of normalcy of home. Caroline woke while they were eating. Her fever had broken, and though she was still weak, her eyes were clearer. Marcus brought her a bowl of broth and helped her sit up enough to drink. The girls were laughing at something Morning Star said. Caroline watched them with an expression Marcus couldn't quite name. Relief, maybe. Or grief for all the moments of peace her daughter had missed. She's happy here. Caroline's voice was hoarse, but steady. I haven't seen her laugh like that since before her father died. Morning Star is good with her. She lost her mother young. I think she remembers what it's like to need gentleness. You've raised her well. Alone, I had help from my wife's sister for the first year. After that, it was just us. We figured it out together. Caroline sipped the broth slowly. I need to tell you what happened. All of it. You deserve to know what you've gotten yourself into. Marcus pulled his chair closer. I'm listening. Caroline took a shaky breath. Vincent Hayes isn't just cruel. He's calculating. When we married, I thought I was getting security for Clara. A home, food, safety. What I got was a prison. He controlled everything. What I wore, what I said, where I went. If I disobeyed, he'd withhold food from Clara, not from me. From her. Said he was teaching me the cost of defiance. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The beating started small. A slap here, a shove there. Then they got worse. He'd wait until Clara was asleep, then he'd come to our room. Sometimes he'd just hit me. Sometimes he'd make me stand in the corner all night, not moving, not sleeping. If I swayed or fell, he'd start Clara's punishment over what punishment, locking her in the root cellar. No light, no food. Sometimes for hours. She's terrified of the dark now. Has nightmares every night. Caroline's hands shook as she set down the bowl. 3 days ago, he came home furious. One of his business deals fell through, and he blamed me somehow. Said I'd embarrassed him in front of the town, though I hadn't left the ranch in weeks. He started hitting me, and I just broke. I pushed him. He fell down the stairs and hit his head. I thought I'd killed him, but you didn't. No. He started moving, groaning. So I grabbed his knife from the table, took Clara's hand, and ran. We had nothing. No money, no supplies. Just each other. We walked for 2 days, hiding when we heard riders. By the 3rd day, I knew the wound was infected. I could barely stand. That's when we found the barn, and that's when I found you. Caroline met his eyes. He'll come, Marcus. Vincent doesn't forgive. He doesn't forget. And he has the resources to hunt us down. The sheriff, the deputies, half the men in Canyon Creek owe him favors or fear him. When he comes, he won't come alone. Then we'll be ready. You don't understand. He'll paint me as the criminal. The ungrateful wife who tried to murder her husband. He'll say I kidnapped Clara, that I'm unfit. The law will be on his side. Marcus leaned forward. The law isn't always right. And it isn't always just. I've seen that enough times to know you could die protecting us. Your daughter could be left alone, or I could live knowing I turned away when someone needed help. That's not living. That's just breathing. Caroline's eyes filled with tears. Why? Why would you risk everything for strangers? Because 3 years ago, I couldn't save my wife. Couldn't save my son. I held them both while they died, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do about it. Marcus's voice roughened. If I can save you and Clara, if I can give you both a chance at a real life, then maybe all that loss meant something. Maybe it made me into someone who could be here, right now, when you needed someone most. Silence settled between them. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters. Inside, the fire crackled and popped, sending shadows dancing across the walls. Caroline reached out and took Marcus's hand. Her grip was weak but firm. Thank you. Not just for saving our lives. For giving us our dignity back. For treating us like we matter. You do matter. The next few days fell into a rhythm. Marcus hunted and checked his trap lines, always careful to scan for riders or signs of pursuit. Morning Star tended the cabin, cooked meals, and continued teaching Clara small skills. How to churn butter, how to mend clothes, how to braid hair properly. Caroline grew stronger each day. By the end of the week, she could stand without help, could walk from the bed to the table. Marcus had fashioned her a dress from fabric his wife had left behind, simple but clean. When Caroline put it on, she looked at herself in the small mirror and wept. What's wrong? Nothing. Everything. I just forgot what it felt like to wear something that wasn't torn or stained with blood. One afternoon, Marcus found Caroline outside, leaning against the cabin wall, her face turned toward the weak winter sun. He approached quietly. Feels good to be out of bed. Don't push yourself too hard. That wound's still healing, I know. But I couldn't stay inside another minute. I needed to feel the air, see the sky. She paused. In Vincent's house, I wasn't allowed outside without permission. Some days I'd go weeks without leaving. Marcus stood beside her, looking out at the forest. That's over now, is it though? Or are we just waiting for him to find us? If he comes, we'll deal with it. Caroline turned to face him. I need to learn how to protect myself. To protect Clara. I can't rely on you forever. You're not relying on me. We're helping each other. She shook her head. No, you're helping us. We've given you nothing but trouble and danger. You've given me purpose. Given Morning Star someone to care for. That's not nothing. Caroline studied his face for a long moment.
Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you.
You really mean that, every word? Then teach me. Teach me to shoot, to track, to survive out here. I need to know I can keep Clara safe if something happens to you. Marcus considered this. All right. We'll start tomorrow. The following morning, Marcus took Caroline into the woods with his spare rifle. She was still weak, but determined. He showed her how to hold the weapon, how to sight down the barrel, how to control her breathing before the shot. Her first attempt sent the bullet wide, the recoil nearly knocking her down. Marcus caught her shoulder, steadying her. Again. She tried 5 more times, each shot getting closer to the mark on the tree. By the 10th attempt, she hit it dead center. Caroline lowered the rifle, her hands shaking from exhaustion and exhilaration. I did it. You did. Now do it again. They practiced every day after that. Marcus also taught her to move quietly through the forest, how to read the land, how to find water and edible plants. Caroline absorbed everything with fierce concentration. As if each lesson was a piece of armor she was building around herself and her daughter. One evening, as they walked back to the cabin, Caroline spoke quietly. I was 17 when I married Clara's father. He was kind and gentle. We were poor, but happy. When he died, I thought my life was over. Then Vincent came along, and I thought he was my salvation. She laughed bitterly. I was so wrong, you couldn't have known. I should have. There were signs. The way he talked about his first wife, like she was property he'd misplaced. The way his ranch hands looked at the ground when he walked by. But I was desperate, and desperation makes you blind. You're not blind anymore. No, now I see everything too clearly. That's almost worse. Back at the cabin, they found the girls playing a game with stones and sticks, their laughter ringing out clear and bright. Caroline stopped at the door, watching her daughter smile. That sound. I'd almost forgotten what her real laugh sounded like. Marcus stood beside her. She's healing too. Give it time. How much time do we have before Vincent finds us? I don't know. But however much it is, we'll use it well. That night, after the girls had gone to bed, Caroline and Marcus sat by the fire. She was mending one of Morning Star's dresses, her needle moving with practiced efficiency. Marcus carved a small wooden horse, the knife gliding smoothly through the soft pine. Can I ask you something? Caroline's voice was hesitant. Of course. What was your wife's name, Sarah? Sarah Brightwater. She was Choctaw like my mother, from a family that settled here after the removal. Strong-willed, quick to laugh, terrible cook. Marcus smiled at the memory. She burned everything. I did most of the cooking, though she'd never admit it wasn't her strength. You loved her very much. I did. Still do, in a way. But grief changes over time. Gets softer around the edges. Becomes something you can carry instead of something that crushes you. Caroline nodded slowly. I loved Clara's father the same way. Sometimes I feel guilty for not fighting harder to keep us afloat after he died. For choosing Vincent, you were trying to survive. There's no shame in that, isn't there? I traded my daughter's safety for a roof over our heads. Some trade. Marcus set down his carving. You made the best choice you could with the information you had. Vincent fooled you. That's on him, not you. Caroline's hands stilled. How do you do that? Do what? Make me feel like less of a failure, because you're not one. You're a woman who survived. Who fought back. Who saved her daughter. That's not failure. That's victory. Caroline looked at him, something shifting in her expression. Something softer, more open. Marcus felt it too, this growing connection between them. Not love, not yet, but the possibility of it. The first tender shoots of something that might bloom given time and care. The fire popped, sending sparks up the chimney. Outside, an owl called, its voice lonely in the darkness. Inside, two wounded souls sat together, learning to trust again, learning to hope. Caroline set aside her mending and moved to sit closer to Marcus on the bench. Close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. Neither spoke, but the silence between them felt comfortable, safe. Marcus reached out and took her hand. Her fingers intertwined with his, and they sat like that until the fire burned down to embers. Until the cold crept back into the room, until the first light of dawn began to paint the windows gold. And somewhere to the south, on a ranch near Canyon Creek, Vincent Hayes sat in his study, his head still bandaged from his fall, plotting his revenge. 3 men sat across from him, hard men with harder eyes, men who asked no questions as long as the pay was good. Vincent slid a leather purse across the desk. Find her. Find them both. And bring them back. Alive if possible. But one way or another, my wife comes home. 2 weeks had passed since Marcus found Caroline bleeding in the snow. The wound on her side had healed into a pale pink scar, still tender, but no longer threatening. She moved with more confidence now, her steps sure and steady as she helped Morningstar prepare breakfast in the early morning light. Clara sat at the table, carefully drawing pictures on scraps of paper Marcus had brought from town. Her tongue poked out in concentration as she sketched the cabin, the trees, 2 girls holding hands. The nightmares still came some nights, but less frequently. Morningstar would crawl into bed beside her when she woke screaming, holding her until the shaking stopped. Marcus returned from checking his trap lines with 3 rabbits and news that made his jaw tight. He waited until the girls went outside to play before speaking. I saw riders yesterday. 4 of them, moving along the ridge east of here. Too far to make out faces, but they were searching for something. Methodical, organized. Caroline's hand froze over the pot she was stirring. Her face went pale. Vincent, maybe, or maybe just hunters. But we should be ready either way. What do we do? First, we don't panic. Second, I teach you more than just shooting. You need to know the land around here, know where to hide if things go wrong. Marcus moved to the window, scanning the tree line. There's an old trapper's cave about 2 miles north, hidden behind a waterfall. If trouble comes and I'm not here, you take the girls and run there. Stay hidden until I come for you, and if you don't come, then you wait 3 days. There's supplies cached there, enough for a week. After 3 days, you head west to Fort Collins. My cousin lives there, runs a trading post. His name is Joseph Redwing. Tell him I sent you. He'll help. Caroline moved beside him, her reflection ghostly in the glass. I won't leave you behind. You will if it means keeping those girls safe. That's not negotiable. Their eyes met in the window's reflection. Caroline's jaw set with stubborn determination, but she nodded. Show me the cave today. They left the girls with strict instructions to stay inside and keep the door barred. Morningstar understood the seriousness in her father's voice and nodded gravely. Clara clutched her doll tighter, but didn't ask questions. Marcus led Caroline north through dense pine forest, moving quickly but carefully. He pointed out landmarks as they went. A lightning-struck oak split down the middle. A boulder shaped like a sleeping bear. 3 birch trees growing in a perfect triangle. Caroline committed each one to memory. The sound of rushing water grew louder as they climbed higher. They emerged onto a rocky outcrop overlooking a steep ravine. A waterfall cascaded down the cliff face, its spray catching the winter sunlight and throwing rainbows into the mist. Marcus edged along the cliff, his feet finding purchase on wet stone. Behind the waterfall, Barely visible through the curtain of water was a dark opening. He reached back for Caroline's hand and pulled her through. The cave was larger than she expected, stretching back into darkness. The air was cold and damp, but dry enough. Marcus struck a match and lit a small lantern he'd left on a natural stone shelf. In the flickering light, Caroline saw supplies stacked against the wall. Blankets, dried food, canteens, ammunition, a rifle. You've been planning this. I've been prepared since the day I brought you home. A man doesn't survive out here without planning for the worst. Caroline walked deeper into the cave, running her hand along the rough stone walls. How did you find this place? My wife and I used to come here sometimes. Before Morning Star was born. It was our secret spot. Marcus's voice grew quiet. Sarah loved the way the waterfall sounded. Said it was like the world singing. Caroline turned to face him. Thank you for trusting me with it. They sat on a flat rock near the entrance, watching the waterfall through the curtain of mist. The sound filled the space between them, making words unnecessary for a while. Finally, Caroline spoke. I'm scared, Marcus. Not just for me, but for Clara, for what this life might do to her. She's already seen too much violence, too much fear. Then we give her something better to remember. We give her days like these last 2 weeks. Safety, laughter, childhood. What if that's not enough? What if Vincent finds us and takes her back? He won't. I promise you that. You can't promise that. You're one man. Marcus turned to look at her fully. One man can be enough if he refuses to break. My grandfather fought in wars where he was outnumbered 100 to 1. He survived because he decided that surviving mattered more than the odds. That's what we'll do. Caroline's eyes searched his face. Why does this matter so much to you? Really, Marcus was quiet for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. When Sarah died, I wanted to die too. Wanted to walk into the snow and not come back. The only thing that stopped me was Morning Star. She needed me. So I kept breathing, kept moving, but I was hollow inside. Then I found you and Clara in those woods, and something shifted. I realized I could still matter. Still make a difference. You gave me that. Tears slipped down Caroline's cheeks. We didn't give you anything. You gave me a reason to fight again. To care, that's everything. She reached out and took his hand. Their fingers intertwined naturally now, familiar with each other's touch. They sat like that until the cold drove them back outside. Back down the mountain to the cabin where the girls waited. That evening, Marcus made a trip into the nearest settlement. A small cluster of buildings called Prescott. He needed supplies and information. The general store was run by an old-timer named Dutch Henderson, who knew everything that happened within 50 miles. Dutch looked up from behind the counter as Marcus entered. Redwing, haven't seen you in a spell. Stocking up for the winter, something like that. Marcus set a list on the counter. Also wondering if you've heard any news from Canyon Creek Way. Dutch's eyes sharpened. Funny you should ask. Had a fellow through here 3 days ago. Well-dressed, riding a fine horse. Asked if anyone had seen a woman and a little girl traveling alone. Said his wife ran off with his daughter, claimed she was sick in the head. What did you tell him? Told him I hadn't seen nothing. Don't care for men who talk about their wives like that. Dutch began gathering items from the shelves. He left his name though. Vincent Hayes. Owns the big spread near Canyon Creek. You know him. Marcus kept his expression neutral. Heard of him. He's looking hard for them. Hard enough that he's got men riding in pairs all through the territory. Offering money for information. $50 for word that leads to finding them. That's a lot of money. Dutch paused in his gathering and looked Marcus in the eye. It is. Enough to tempt most folks. But I figure a man who offers that kind of money for his own wife probably ain't planning a happy reunion. So I keep my mouth shut. I appreciate that. You got them holed up somewhere safe. Marcus didn't answer, but Dutch nodded as if he had. Your secret's safe with me. But watch yourself. Hayes has got influence. Sheriff, judge, half the territory's in his pocket one way or another. Marcus paid for his supplies and headed back into the cold. The ride home took 2 hours, and he spent them thinking, planning. Vincent was closing in. It was only a matter of time before those riders expanded their search pattern and found the cabin. They needed to be ready. When he arrived home, he found Carolyn teaching Clara to read by firelight. Morning Star sat nearby, mending clothes. The domestic scene struck him with its simple beauty. This was what they were fighting for. These quiet moments of peace. After the girls went to bed, Marcus told Carolyn what he'd learned. Her face went tight with fear, but she didn't cry. Instead, she stood and walked to the window, staring out into the darkness. How long do we have? Days, maybe a week if we're lucky. They're searching in a pattern, working their way north. Eventually they'll reach us. Then we need a plan. Something better than just hiding and hoping. What are you thinking? Caroline turned to face him. We run. Tonight. Take the girls and disappear into the mountains. Head west like you said. Find your cousin. That's 3 days hard travel in the snow with children. Clara's strong, but she's still small. And Morning Star has never been that far from home. Then we make it 4 days, 5 if we have to. But we can't just sit here waiting for Vincent to knock on the door. Marcus walked to her, placed his hands on her shoulders. Running in panic isn't the answer. We need to be smart. Strategic. Then tell me the strategy, because all I see is us trapped. We draw them away from here. I'll leave a false trail heading east, make them think you went that direction. While they're chasing shadows, you take the girls to the cave. Wait for my signal. And what's your signal? 3 rifle shots in quick succession. You hear that, you know it's safe to come back. And if I don't hear it, then you know what to do. You wait 3 days and head west. Caroline's hands gripped his arms. I can't lose you. Not now. Not after everything, you won't. I'm not planning to die. I'm planning to survive. But we need contingencies. Stop talking about this like you're already gone. Marcus pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. I'm not gone. I'm right here. But I need to know you'll do what's necessary if things go wrong. Promise me. Carolyn pressed her face against his chest, her voice muffled. I promise. But you have to promise me something too. Anything. Promise you'll come back. Promise you'll find us, I promise. On my life, on my daughter's life, on everything I hold sacred. I will come back to you. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the firelight. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the scent of coming snow. The first flakes began to fall, soft and silent, covering the world in white. The next morning, Marcus woke before dawn and began preparing. He packed supplies for the cave, making sure there was enough food and water for at least a week. He cleaned and loaded every weapon in the cabin, showing Caroline again how to work the mechanisms. Morning Star watched her father with knowing eyes. You're leaving, only for a little while. I need to make sure those men looking for Carolyn go the wrong direction. The girl nodded, accepting this without argument. She was too much like her mother, too wise for her years. I'll take care of them, I know you will. You're stronger than you know, little one. Clara appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Why is everyone awake? It's still dark. Caroline scooped her up. We're going on an adventure today. Remember that cave Marcus showed me? We're going to camp there for a few days. Like explorers. Exactly like explorers. Can I bring my doll? Of course. They ate a quick breakfast of cornmeal and dried berries. Then Marcus helped them pack. He gave Caroline his spare rifle and made sure she had ammunition. He showed her again how to bar the cave entrance from inside, how to stay quiet if she heard voices. As the sun rose, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Marcus walked them to the edge of the forest. Morning Star held Clara's hand, keeping her steady on the icy path. Carolyn walked beside Marcus, her rifle slung over her shoulder. At the tree line, Marcus stopped. "This is where we part ways. You remember the route, every landmark. The split oak, the bear boulder, the birch triangle. I remember good. Stay hidden. Stay quiet. Don't come out until you hear my signal. 3 shots, 3 shots." Marcus turned to Morning Star and knelt down. "Take care of them for me. Always, Papa." He hugged her tight, then stood and faced Caroline. She was trying to be brave, but he could see the fear in her eyes. He pulled her close and kissed her forehead. "This isn't goodbye. This is just see you soon, see you soon." Carolyn's voice was steady despite the tears on her cheeks. Marcus watched them disappear into the trees, 3 figures moving through the snow toward safety. When they were out of sight, he turned back to the cabin and began his work. He made obvious tracks heading east, breaking branches, disturbing snow, leaving signs that even an amateur tracker could follow. Then he circled back, climbed into the rafters of his cabin, and waited. If Vincent's men came, they'd find exactly what he wanted them to find: evidence of a hasty departure heading east. And while they chased that false trail, his family would be safe. The word echoed in his mind. Family. That's what they'd become without him even realizing it. Caroline and Clara weren't just people he'd rescued anymore. They were his to protect, his to cherish. And he would die before he let Vincent Hayes take them back. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, then began its descent. Marcus remained still and silent in the rafters, his rifle across his knees, waiting, watching, ready for whatever came next. As dusk approached, he heard it. The sound of horses. Multiple riders moving through the trees. They were coming. 4 riders emerged from the tree line just as the sun touched the horizon. Marcus watched them from his perch in the rafters, his breathing slow and controlled. They moved with the confidence of men who'd done this kind of work before, spreading out to surround the cabin before anyone approached the door. The lead rider was a tall man with a scar running from his left eye to his jaw. He dismounted and walked to the cabin door, testing it with one hand. Finding it unlocked, he pushed it open and stepped inside. The other 3 remained mounted, rifles ready, scanning the woods. Marcus had a clear shot at all of them from his position, but he held his fire. Killing wasn't the plan. Misdirection was. He watched the scarred man move through the cabin, opening cupboards, checking under the bed. The man found exactly what Marcus had left for him to find. A half-eaten meal on the table, still slightly warm. Blankets hastily thrown aside. A child's doll abandoned near the door. The scarred man stepped back outside and called to his companions. They were here recent. Left in a hurry. Tracks head east toward the ridge. Another rider, younger with nervous eyes, gestured toward the forest. Could be a trap. Drawing us away from something, the scarred man shook his head. Hayes said the woman's got a kid. She's running scared, not thinking tactical. We follow the tracks. If we push hard, we can catch them before they reach the next settlement. They mounted up and rode east, exactly as Marcus had planned. He waited until the sound of hooves faded completely before climbing down from the rafters. His body ached from staying still so long, but he ignored it. Phase 1 was complete. Now came the harder part. Marcus gathered additional supplies and weapons, then set out on foot heading north. He couldn't risk taking his horse. The animal's tracks would be too easy to follow back to the cave. Instead, he moved through the forest like his grandfather had taught him, leaving barely a trace. Where he had to step in snow, he used a pine branch to sweep away his prints. The journey to the cave took 3 hours in the dark. He navigated by starlight and memory, counting his steps, reading the shapes of trees against the sky. When he finally heard the waterfall's roar, relief flooded through him. He was close. Marcus approached the cave carefully, giving the signal his daughter would recognize. 3 low hoots like a mountain owl. A moment later, Morningstar's voice came from behind the waterfall. "Papa!" He pushed through the curtain of icy spray and found them huddled around a small fire near the back of the cave. Carolyn stood immediately, rifle in hand, then lowered it when she saw him. Her whole body sagged with relief. "You came back. I said I would." Marcus moved to the fire, warming his hands. They took the bait. 4 riders heading east. "They'll be halfway to the ridge by now." Clara ran to him and wrapped her arms around his legs. "I knew you'd come. Morningstar said you always keep your promises." Marcus lifted her up, holding her close. "How are you holding up, little one? It's cold and wet, and I miss my bed. But Morningstar told me stories about brave warriors, and it helped." He looked at his daughter over Clara's head. Morningstar met his eyes with quiet pride. She'd done well, keeping the younger girl calm and occupied. That took strength. Caroline approached, her face drawn with exhaustion but determined. "What happens now? Do we stay here or move on?" "We stay for tonight. Let them chase ghosts for a while. Tomorrow I'll scout their position, see if they've given up or if they're still searching." Marcus set Clara down gently. "But we should take turns keeping watch. Just in case, I'll take first watch." Caroline moved toward the cave entrance. "You've been moving all day." "Rest," Marcus wanted to argue, but he was bone-tired. "All right. Wake me in 3 hours." He settled near the fire with Morningstar curled against his side. Clara lay on the other side, her breathing already deep and even. The cave was cramped and cold, but it was safe. That was all that mattered. Caroline stood at the entrance, silhouetted against the waterfall's spray. Marcus watched her for a moment before closing his eyes. She'd changed so much in these few weeks. The terrified, broken woman he'd found bleeding in the snow had become someone fierce and capable. Someone who stood guard over her family with a rifle in her hands and steel in her spine. He woke to Morningstar shaking his shoulder. "Papa, someone's coming." Marcus was on his feet instantly, rifle in hand. Caroline had already moved back from the entrance, positioning herself between the opening and the girls. Her face was pale but calm. "How many?" Morningstar whispered. "I heard voices. At least 2, maybe 3. They're below the waterfall." Marcus moved to the entrance and listened. Male voices drifted up through the roar of water, arguing about something. He caught fragments of conversation. "Tracks end here. Must have gone into the water. Check downstream." They'd backtracked. Somehow they'd realized the eastern trail was false and returned to the cabin. Now they were searching the area systematically. It was only a matter of time before they found the cave. Marcus turned back to the others. "There's another way out. A narrow passage at the back of the cave. It comes out about half a mile north. We need to move now." Caroline gathered Clara quickly while Morningstar kicked dirt over the fire. They moved deeper into the cave, Marcus leading the way with a torch made from a pine branch. The passage was tight, forcing them to move single file. In some places they had to crawl. Clara whimpered in the darkness. "I don't like this." "It's too small." Morningstar's voice came soft and steady from behind her. "Pretend you're a rabbit going through a tunnel. Rabbits are brave. They explore dark places all the time. I'm a brave rabbit." Clara's voice was still scared but determined. The passage seemed to go on forever, twisting and turning through solid rock. Marcus's torch burned low, throwing wild shadows on the walls. Behind them, he heard shouts. The men had found the cave. They're inside. "Keep moving. Don't stop." Marcus pushed forward faster, ignoring the scrape of rock against his shoulders. The passage began to slope upward, and fresh air touched his face. They were close. The exit was a narrow crack in the rock face, barely wide enough for an adult. Marcus went through first, then helped the others out one by one. They emerged onto a rocky hillside covered in pine trees. Snow was falling again, heavy and thick. Which way? Carolyn clutched Clara against her chest. North. There's an old mining camp about 5 miles from here. Abandoned, but the structures are still standing. We can hide there until this blows over. They ran through the forest, Marcus setting a brutal pace. Behind them, voices echoed from the cave entrance. The men had found the passage. Morning Star kept up easily, her young legs strong and sure. But Caroline struggled with Clara's weight, and the little girl was too exhausted to walk on her own.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us now. Back to the story.
Marcus stopped and took Clara from Caroline's arms. I've got her. You focus on keeping up. They pushed on through the snow and darkness. Marcus's lungs burned, his legs ached, but he didn't slow down. Clara's head rested on his shoulder, her small body limp with exhaustion. She'd fallen asleep despite everything, trusting him to keep her safe. The mining camp appeared like a ghost town in the snowfall. 3 buildings still stood, their walls weathered but intact. Marcus led them to the largest structure, an old bunkhouse with a stone fireplace. The door hung crooked on broken hinges. Inside was dark and musty, but dry. Morning Star immediately began gathering scraps of wood for a fire while Marcus barred the door with a heavy beam. Carolyn collapsed against the wall, gasping for breath. Are we safe here? For now. But we can't stay long. Those men are persistent. Marcus set Clara down on a pile of old blankets someone had left behind. She didn't wake, just curled into a ball and kept sleeping. Morning Star got a small fire going in the hearth. The smoke found its way up the chimney, and weak warmth began to spread through the room. They sat close to the flames, listening to the wind howl outside. Caroline spoke quietly. This can't go on forever. We can't keep running. Sooner or later Vincent's men will find us, or we'll run out of places to hide, I know. Marcus stared into the flames. We need a different approach. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time to go on the offense. Stop running and start fighting back. Caroline looked at him sharply. You want to confront Vincent directly, not directly. But I want to take away his advantages. Right now he has money men and the law on his side. We need to change that equation. How? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Then he said, Dutch Henderson knows half the territory. He didn't believe Vincent's story about you being crazy. Others might not either, if they knew the truth. What if we told them? Who would believe me over Vincent Hayes? Maybe no one. But maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point is to plant doubt. Make people ask questions. Once people start questioning, Vincent's power begins to crack. Carolyn shook her head. You're talking about destroying a powerful man's reputation. That's dangerous, more dangerous than this. Than running through the snow with children, hiding in caves, always looking over our shoulders. Marcus met her eyes. I'm tired of running, Carolyn. I think you are too. She held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded slowly. What do you need me to do? Tell your story. Write it down, every detail. What Vincent did, how he treated you and Clara. We'll make copies, spread them around the territory. Let people read the truth in your own words, and if it doesn't work, if people still side with him, then at least we tried. At least we fought back instead of just hiding. Morning Star had been listening quietly. She spoke up now, her voice thoughtful. My teacher in town, Mrs. Fletcher, she's kind. She always said women should have more protection under the law. Maybe she would help. Marcus looked at his daughter with surprise and pride. That's good thinking, little one. Mrs. Fletcher has influence with the church ladies. If we could get them on our side, we'd have voices Vincent can't easily silence. Caroline's expression shifted, hope replacing despair. It could work. It might actually work. They spent the rest of the night planning. Caroline wrote her story on paper Marcus found in the mining office, her hands shaking at first but growing steadier as she went. She didn't hold back, describing every beating, every threat, every moment of terror. When she finished, she had 5 pages of cramped handwriting. Marcus read it by firelight, his jaw tightening with each paragraph. When he finished, he looked at Carolyn with new respect. This is powerful. This will make people listen, or it will make Vincent kill us all. Caroline's voice was matter of fact. He's already trying to kill us. This way we're at least fighting on our terms. As dawn broke, they prepared to move again. The snow had stopped, leaving the world crystalline and silent. Marcus scouted the area and found no sign of immediate pursuit. The men had either lost their trail or were regrouping. We head west to Fort Collins. Marcus laid out the plan. My cousin Joseph has connections. He can help us make copies of Caroline's story and distribute them. Once word spreads, Vincent will have a harder time using the law against us. How long will it take to reach Fort Collins? 3 days if we push hard. 5 if we take it easy for the children's sake. Carolyn looked at Clara, still sleeping peacefully despite everything. We take it easy. I won't risk her health, agreed. Marcus began gathering their meager supplies. We'll move during the day, make camp before dark. Stay off main trails but close enough to civilization that we can get help if needed. They set out as the sun climbed higher, 4 figures moving through the pristine snow. Morning Star led the way, her sharp eyes spotting the easiest paths. Caroline carried Clara until the little girl woke and insisted on walking. Marcus brought up the rear, constantly scanning for pursuit. By midday, they'd covered good ground. They stopped to rest beside a frozen stream, eating dried meat and hard biscuit. Clara found a patch of ice and slid across it, laughing. The sound was so unexpected, so pure, that everyone stopped to watch. She sounds like a normal child again. Caroline's voice was thick with emotion. She is a normal child. She's just been through things no child should face. But she's healing. Marcus watched Clara try to get Morningstar to slide with her. They both are. That afternoon they saw smoke on the horizon. A small settlement, maybe a dozen buildings. Marcus wanted to avoid it, but they were running low on supplies. He decided to risk it. I'll go in alone. You 3 wait in the trees. If I'm not back in an hour, head west without me. Carolyn grabbed his arm. We're not leaving you. If something happens to me, Clara needs you. Morning Star needs you. Getting caught because you waited doesn't help anyone. Marcus's voice was firm. 1 hour. Then you move. He entered the settlement carefully, his rifle slung casually over his shoulder. The place was called Timber Ridge, according to a hand-painted sign. The general store was small but well stocked. An older woman stood behind the counter, her face weathered, but kind. Help you. Need some supplies. Travel rations, blankets if you have them. Marcus set coins on the counter. The woman gathered items efficiently. Heading west, that's right. Lot of folks heading that way lately. Running from something or running toward it, that's always the question. She wrapped the supplies in brown paper. You got family, a daughter. And others I'm responsible for. The woman studied him with sharp eyes. You're that Choctaw hunter from over near Prescott. Red Wing, Marcus tensed. You know me, know of you. Dutch Henderson spoke well of you last time he came through. Said you were a good man. The woman lowered her voice. Said you might be helping someone who needed it. Marcus didn't confirm or deny, just waited. There were men through here 2 days ago. Asked about a woman and child. Offered money for information. I told them I hadn't seen nothing. The woman pushed the wrapped supplies across the counter. Whatever you're mixed up in, I hope it ends well. And I hope the right people win. Thank you. Marcus took the supplies. For everything, he returned to the trees where the others waited. Caroline's face flooded with relief when she saw him. I was starting to worry, we're all right. But we need to keep moving. Word spreading about Vincent's search. The more distance we put between us and Canyon Creek, The better. They traveled until dusk, then made camp in a sheltered hollow. Marcus built a small fire, keeping it low and smokeless. They ate hot food for the first time in days, and the warmth did more for morale than anything else could have. That night, as the girls slept, Caroline and Marcus sat close together, sharing body heat against the cold. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Do you really think we can win this? I think we have to try." For them, Marcus gestured toward the sleeping children. "They deserve better than a life spent running and hiding. When this is over, if we survive, what then? Where do we go? Anywhere we want. We could head to California, start fresh where no one knows us. Or stay in Colorado if you prefer. Build a real home, not just a cabin to hide in." Caroline was quiet for a moment. "I'd like that. A real home. A place where Clara can grow up safe, where Morning Star can go to school without worry. Where we can just be, then that's what we'll build." Together, she lifted her head to look at him. "You mean that?" "Together, I do. These past weeks, having you and Clara with us, it's made me remember what family feels like. What home feels like. I don't want to lose that." Caroline reached up and touched his face gently. "I don't want to lose it either. Or you." Marcus covered her hand with his own. "You won't. I'm not going anywhere." They sat like that until the fire burned to embers and the stars wheeled overhead. Tomorrow they would continue west, toward Fort Collins, toward safety, toward a future they were building one day at a time. But tonight, they had each other and the quiet peace of knowing they were no longer running alone. In the darkness, neither of them saw the figure watching from the ridge above. One of Vincent's men had found them after all, and now he slipped away silently to report back to his employer. The hunt was far from over. They reached Fort Collins 2 days later, exhausted but alive. The town sprawled along the Cashla Powder River, larger and more bustling than anything Clara had ever seen. She clung to Caroline's hand, eyes wide at the wagons, horses, and crowds of people moving through the muddy streets. Marcus led them to a modest trading post on the edge of town. A hand-painted sign read Red Wing Trading Company. The door chimed as they entered, and a man looked up from behind the counter. He was younger than Marcus, maybe 30, with the same dark eyes and high cheekbones that marked their shared Choctaw heritage. Joseph's face broke into a surprised smile. "Marcus, I'll be damned. Didn't expect to see you until spring." He came around the counter, then stopped when he saw the others. "And you brought company, Joseph. This is Caroline Hayes and her daughter Clara. And you remember Morning Star." Marcus set down their packs. "We need your help." "All of it." Joseph's expression shifted to serious concern. "Come to the back. We'll talk there." The back room was cluttered with supplies and furs, but warm from a pot-bellied stove. Joseph cleared chairs for everyone while Marcus explained everything. Vincent Hayes, the abuse, the escape, the men hunting them. When he finished, Joseph sat back with a long whistle. "You've stepped into a hornet's nest, cousin. Vincent Hayes has reach. Money, connections, politicians in his pocket." He gestured to Caroline. "No offense, ma'am, but going up against a man like that takes more than just a true story, I know." Caroline's voice was steady. "That's why we need help spreading it. Making sure enough people hear the truth that he can't silence all of them." Joseph drummed his fingers on the table, thinking. "I know a printer. Good man, believes in justice over profit. He could make copies of your account, distribute them to newspapers across the territory. But it'll cost money. How much?" Marcus reached for his coin purse. "More than you've got." Joseph held up a hand. "But I can cover it. Consider it an investment in doing the right thing." He looked at Caroline. "You understand this will make you a target. Once your story's public, Vincent will know exactly where you are. He already knows." Caroline met his eyes without flinching. "His men have been tracking us for weeks. At least this way we're not just hiding. We're fighting, Joseph nodded slowly. All right then. We move fast. Get your story to the printer today. Have copies distributed by tomorrow. Meanwhile, you'll stay here. I've got rooms upstairs. Not fancy but safe. We can't put you in danger. Marcus started to object. Your family. That's what family does. Joseph stood. Besides, I've been looking for a good fight. Life's been too quiet lately. That evening, while Caroline worked with the printer to finalize her account, Marcus sat with Joseph in the trading post. Morning Star and Clara had fallen asleep upstairs, exhausted from days of travel. You care for her. Joseph's statement was matter of fact, not a question. I do. Marcus didn't deny it. More than I thought I could care for anyone after Sarah. Sarah would be glad. She never wanted you to be alone forever. Joseph poured them both coffee. This Caroline, she's strong. I can see it in her eyes. She's been through hell, but it hasn't broken her. It's made her stronger. Marcus sipped the bitter brew. She's teaching Clara the same strength. That little girl has been through things that would destroy most adults, but she still laughs, still plays, still trusts. And Morning Star, how's she handling all this? Better than I could have hoped. She's taken Clara under her wing like a little sister. I think having someone to protect has helped her heal from losing her mother. Joseph was quiet for a moment. You know this ends in blood, right? Men like Vincent Hayes don't give up when challenged. They escalate, I know. That's why I need you to promise me something. Marcus set down his cup. If things go wrong, if Vincent comes and I can't stop him, you get them out. Caroline, Clara, Morning Star, you take them somewhere safe and you don't look back and leave you to die alone. Not happening, cousin. I'm not asking. I'm telling you what needs to happen. Those three deserve a life without fear. If it costs me mine to give them that, so be it. Joseph studied his cousin's face, then nodded reluctantly. You have my word. But don't plan on dying just yet. We've got too much work to do. The next morning, Caroline's story hit the streets. The printer had worked through the night, producing 200 copies. Joseph had connections with newspaper editors in Fort Collins, Denver, and Colorado Springs. By noon, Caroline's words were being read across the territory. The reaction was immediate and divided. Some people dismissed it as the ravings of a hysterical woman. But others, especially women who'd lived through similar situations, recognized the truth in her words. By afternoon, a group of women from the local church had gathered at the trading post, asking to speak with Caroline. Mrs. Fletcher, Morning Star's former teacher, led the group. She was a stern woman in her 50s with iron gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She took Caroline's hands in her own. We believe you. Every word. And we're going to help. How? Caroline was overwhelmed by the support. We're going to the territorial governor. Mrs. Fletcher's voice was firm. We'll demand an investigation into Vincent Hayes. With enough pressure, even powerful men can be held accountable. He'll deny everything. He'll say I'm lying, let him. We've already heard from 3 other women who worked at his ranch. They're willing to testify about what they witnessed. You're not alone in this anymore. Caroline's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. I don't know what else to say. Say you'll keep fighting. That's all we ask. Mrs. Fletcher squeezed her hands. Evil thrives when good people stay silent. We're done being silent. 2 days passed in relative peace. Caroline spent her time with the churchwomen, gathering testimony and building their case. Marcus helped Joseph around the trading post while keeping watch for any sign of Vincent's men. The girls played in the fenced yard behind the building, their laughter a constant reminder of what they were protecting. On the 3rd day, a rider arrived at dawn. He was one of Dutch Henderson's boys, barely 16, and his horse was lathered from hard riding. Dutch sent me. Says there's a group of men heading this way. 8 or 9 riders, all armed. Led by a well-dressed man on a black horse, Vincent. Marcus's blood ran cold. How far behind you? Half a day, maybe less. They were asking questions in every town, following your trail. The boy handed over a note from Dutch. It was brief and to the point. Hayes is coming. He's got men and warrants. Claims you kidnapped his wife and daughter. Sheriff's with him. Marcus crumpled the note. So Vincent bought himself legal cover. Smart, Joseph appeared at his shoulder. We need to move them. Get them out of town before Hayes arrives. No. Caroline's voice came from the stairs. She descended with determination in every step. No more running. If Vincent wants me, he can face me here, in front of witnesses, with the truth already public. Caroline, he has the law on his side now. Marcus moved to her. If the sheriff arrests you, then I'll tell my story in court. In front of a judge and jury. That's better than spending my life looking over my shoulder. She's right. Mrs. Fletcher had arrived with several other women. They filled the trading post, a solid wall of feminine resolve. We've been gathering support. The governor has agreed to send a federal marshal to investigate. He should arrive today. And if he doesn't arrive before Vincent does, Marcus kept his voice level, then we delay. We make Vincent wait, make him explain himself in front of the whole town. Mrs. Fletcher's eyes were hard. He's counting on intimidation and speed. We take those away from him. Marcus looked at Caroline. Are you sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything. She took his hand. I'm done being a victim. Whatever happens, I face it standing up. The town of Fort Collins transformed over the next few hours. Word spread about Vincent Hayes's approach, and people began choosing sides. The churchwomen set up in the town square, ready to bear witness. Townspeople gathered, curious and concerned. Joseph positioned himself on the trading post roof with a rifle. Marcus stayed close to Caroline and the girls when Vincent finally arrived. He came with 8 armed men and the Canyon Creek sheriff. He rode at the head of the group, his face a mask of controlled fury. He was older than Marcus expected, maybe 50, with silver hair and the bearing of a man used to command. His eyes swept the crowd and found Caroline standing in front of the trading post. There she is. Sheriff Dalton, arrest that woman for kidnapping and attempted murder. Vincent's voice carried across the square. The sheriff, a heavy-set man who looked distinctly uncomfortable, dismounted slowly. Now, Mr. Hayes, maybe we should talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. She tried to kill me, stole my daughter, and ran. I have every right to bring her back. Vincent's hand rested on his gun. That's my wife and my child. Caroline stepped forward, Clara hidden behind her skirts. I'm not your wife anymore, Vincent. I left you because you beat me, threatened my daughter, and made our lives hell. And I have proof, lies, all lies. A woman scorned making up stories. Vincent addressed the crowd. Don't believe her hysteria. Mrs. Fletcher moved to Caroline's side. We have testimony from multiple witnesses. Women who worked in your household, who saw the bruises, heard the threats. Your reputation won't protect you anymore. Vincent's composure cracked slightly. You have no authority here. Sheriff do. Your job. Before the sheriff could respond, a new voice cut through the tension. I believe I have authority. A man on a gray horse rode into the square. He wore a federal marshal's badge and his eyes were cold. I'm Marshal William Grant, sent by the territorial governor to investigate allegations against Vincent Hayes. Vincent's face went white, then red. This is outrageous. I'm the victim here. Then you won't mind answering some questions. Marshal Grant dismounted. Starting with the 3 women who filed formal complaints about conditions at your ranch, and the doctor who treated your wife's injuries and is willing to testify about their severity. Those women are disgruntled former employees. And my wife's injuries were from a fall. Vincent was losing control now, his voice rising. A fall that resulted in a knife wound. The marshal's tone was dry. Interesting physics, the crowd murmured. Vincent's men shifted uneasily, sensing the tide turning against their employer. The sheriff stepped away, clearly wanting no part of what was coming. Vincent's hand moved toward his gun. "I won't be slandered like this. If you won't uphold the law, I'll take what's mine by force." Marcus stepped in front of Caroline and Clara, his rifle ready but not aimed. "You'll have to go through me first. And everyone else here who's done with watching powerful men abuse their families." Joseph appeared from the trading post, armed. "I'm with Marcus, so am I." Dutch Henderson emerged from the crowd with several other men. "We've heard enough stories about you, Hayes. Time someone stood up to you." Vincent looked around at the hostile faces, the armed men, the marshal's hard stare. He was surrounded and outmaneuvered. For the first time in his life, money and influence couldn't buy his way out. "You'll regret this. All of you." Vincent's voice shook with rage. "I'll destroy every one of you." "No, you won't." Marshal Grant moved forward. "Vincent Hayes, you're under arrest for assault, unlawful imprisonment, and threatening witnesses. Put your hands where I can see them." "I won't." Vincent's hand flashed to his gun. Everything happened at once. Marcus shoved Caroline and Clara to the ground. Joseph fired a warning shot into the air. Vincent's men scattered, unwilling to die for a lost cause. The marshal drew his own weapon. With practiced speed, Vincent froze, his gun halfway out of its holster. He looked around at the rifles aimed at him, at the marshal's steady hand, at the crowd's angry faces. Slowly, he raised his hands. The marshal disarmed him efficiently and snapped iron cuffs around his wrists. "Your money can't buy you out of federal charges, Hayes. You'll face a judge in Denver, and there are enough witnesses to hang you 3 times over." As the marshal led Vincent away, the man's eyes found Caroline one last time. "This isn't over. Even from prison, I have reach. You'll never be safe." Caroline stood tall, Clara in her arms. "I'm already safe, because I'm not alone anymore. And you have no power over me." "None at all." Vincent was hauled onto a horse, his hands bound, his empire crumbling. The crowd watched in silence as the marshal rode away with his prisoner, 8. Hired guns following at a distance, suddenly unemployed. When they were gone, the square erupted in cheers. Women hugged Caroline, congratulating her on her courage. Men shook Marcus's hand. Mrs. Fletcher organized an impromptu celebration at the church, but Caroline just stood there, trembling. The adrenaline drained away, leaving her shaking and tearful. Marcus wrapped his arms around her, holding her and Clara together. "It's over. You're free." "I don't feel free yet. I feel terrified. What if he escapes? What if he comes back?" "He won't. The marshal will make sure of it. And even if somehow he did, you've got a whole town behind you now. A whole territory. You're not fighting alone." Morning Star appeared and hugged Caroline's waist. "You were so brave." Like a warrior, Caroline knelt down, gathering both girls close. "We were all brave. All of us together." That evening, Joseph hosted a dinner at the trading post. The church women brought food, filling the tables with more dishes than 10 people could eat. Dutch Henderson told stories that made everyone laugh. The sheriff, embarrassed about his role, apologized profusely to Caroline and promised to make sure Vincent's trial was fair and swift. As the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant orange and gold, Marcus found Caroline standing outside, watching the girls play in the yard. He joined her, their shoulders touching. "What are you thinking?" Marcus's voice was soft. "That a month ago, I was bleeding in the snow, sure I was going to die. And now I'm here, surrounded by friends, watching my daughter play without fear. It doesn't seem real. It's real, and it's yours. You fought for it, earned it. We fought for it." Caroline turned to face him. "I couldn't have done any of this without you. You saved my life in every way a person can be saved. You saved mine too. Gave me purpose again. Reminded me what's worth fighting for." They stood close, the space between them charged with unspoken feelings. Finally, Caroline said quietly, what happens now? When the celebration ends and life gets normal again. Where do we go? Wherever you want. Marcus touched her face gently, but I'm hoping we go together. You, me, Clara, Morning Star. A real family, a family. Caroline's eyes filled with tears. I'd like that. More than anything, then that's what we'll be. Marcus leaned down and kissed her forehead. No more running. No more hiding, just living. Building something good. Clara's voice rang out from the yard. Mama, look. Morning Star taught me to whistle. They turned to see the two girls standing. Together, Clara's small fingers in her mouth, producing a shrill sound. Morning Star beamed with pride. Both women laughed, the sound clear and free. 2 months later, spring arrived in full force. The snow melted completely, revealing green grass and wildflowers. In a small ceremony at Fort Collins Church, Marcus and Caroline were married. Clara served as flower girl, scattering petals with serious concentration. Morning Star stood beside her father, holding the rings. Vincent Hayes faced trial in Denver and was convicted on multiple charges. The judge, swayed by testimony from a dozen women and the evidence of his crimes, sentenced him to 20 years hard labor. His ranch was sold at auction, the proceeds divided among his victims. Marcus, Caroline, and the girls moved to a new homestead west of Fort Collins. A place with good water, fertile soil, and no ghosts. They built a house together, all four. Of them, each board and nail a declaration of their new life. On their first night in the completed house, they gathered around the fireplace. Clara and Morning Star played with wooden dolls Marcus had carved. Caroline leaned against her husband's shoulder. Content and peaceful. Are you happy? Marcus asked quietly. Caroline looked around at the warm room, the playing children, the man beside her. Yes, for the first time in years I'm genuinely happy. This is home. This is home. Marcus agreed, pulling her closer. Outside, stars emerged one by one in the darkening sky. Inside, a family found the peace they'd fought so hard to claim. Not perfect, still healing, but together. And that was everything. He found a little girl trembling in a hayloft, and she led him to her bleeding mother in the snow. What Marcus didn't know then was that saving them would save him too. That in giving them shelter, he'd find his own way home. Sometimes the people we rescue end up rescuing us right back. And sometimes, in the midst of winter's darkest cold, we find the warmth that changes everything 1 year later. Spring had returned to Colorado territory, but this time it brought more than just melting snow and green grass. It brought a kind of peace that settled over the Red Wing homestead like morning sunlight. Warm and gentle and full of promise, Marcus stood at the fence line, watching his herd of horses graze in the meadow below. 20 head now, up from the 5 he'd started with last year. The breeding program was working, and word had spread about the quality of his animals. Ranchers came from 3 counties over to buy his stock. Behind him, the house rose solid and sturdy against the backdrop of pine-covered hills. 2 stories now, with a wide porch that wrapped around 3 sides. Caroline had insisted on the porch, said she wanted a place to sit and watch the sunset without feeling confined. Marcus had built it exactly to her specifications. Every board placed with care. The sound of laughter drifted from the barn. Clara's voice, high and bright, mixing with Morning Star's deeper tones. At 6 years old now, Clara had grown taller and stronger. Her cheeks filled out with good food, and her eyes clear of the haunted look they'd carried a year ago. She spent her days following Morning Star everywhere, learning to ride, to rope, to read tracks in the dirt. Morning Star had blossomed too. At 10, she was becoming a young woman, wise beyond her years, but finally allowed to be a child when she wanted. She'd taken her role as big sister seriously, teaching Clara everything from horse care to the Choctaw stories her grandmother had taught her. Marcus heard footsteps on the path behind him and turned to see Caroline approaching, one hand resting on her swollen belly. 7 months pregnant now, carrying the child they'd made together. A son, the midwife predicted. Though Caroline said she didn't care as long as the baby was healthy. You're supposed to be resting. Marcus moved to her side, offering his arm. I've rested enough. Besides, I wanted to see what you were brooding about out here. Carol leaned against him, fitting perfectly under his shoulder. You get that faraway look sometimes, like you're expecting trouble, old habits. After everything we went through, it's hard to believe the peace will last. It will last because we make it last. Because we choose it every day. Carolyn turned to face him fully. Vincent is locked away in a prison 300 miles from here. His influence is gone. His ranch sold. The women who worked there have found new lives. We won, I know. But sometimes I wake up at night and have to check all the doors. Make sure everyone's safe. Caroline took his hand and placed it on her belly. Feel that. The baby kicked hard against his palm. That's your son telling you to stop worrying and start living. We're safe, Marcus. We're home. He pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair, the soap she made from lavender and lye. You're right. I just never want to take it for granted. Then don't. Be grateful every day, but don't let fear steal your joy. Carolyn kissed his cheek. Now come inside. Joseph and his new wife are coming for dinner, and I need you to help set the table. They walked back to the house together, Marcus's hand never leaving the small of her back. Inside, the main room smelled of baking bread and roasting meat. Caroline had become an excellent cook over the past year, taking pride in feeding her family well. The long table that Marcus had built could seat 12, and it was rarely empty. Friends dropped by often, neighbors came to trade goods and stories. And the house had become a gathering place for the community. Clara burst through the back door, her dress streaked with dirt and hay. Mama, Morning Star says I can help her break the new colt tomorrow. Can I please, if you finish your reading lessons first? Carolyn gave her daughter a stern look that didn't quite hide her smile. And you need to clean up before dinner. Look at you, but Mama, we were in the barn and the chickens got loose, and we had to chase them, and… Clara, bath, now, Carolyn pointed toward the washroom. The little girl sighed dramatically but obeyed, stomping off with exaggerated reluctance. Morning Star appeared in the doorway, equally dirty but trying to look more dignified about it. I'll help her, Caroline. Morning Star headed after Clara, and I'll make sure she actually washes behind her ears this time. Thank you, sweetheart. Caroline called after her, then turned to Marcus with a laugh. Can you believe how much she's grown, both of them? They're turning into fine young women. Marcus moved to the kitchen to help with dinner preparations. You've done well with them. We've done well with them. Caroline corrected, handing him a basket of potatoes to peel. This family belongs to both of us. An hour later, Joseph arrived with his wife Anna, a cheerful woman from Fort Collins who ran the new schoolhouse in town. She brought books for the girls and news from the wider world. Territorial politics, railroad expansion plans, stories of settlement and growth. Over dinner, the conversation flowed easily. Joseph talked about expanding his trading post, maybe opening a second location in Denver. Anna discussed her students' progress and her plans for a proper school building. The girls chattered about horses and lessons and the upcoming county fair. Caroline watched it all with quiet contentment. This was what she'd dreamed of during those dark days with Vincent. A table full of laughter, children safe and happy, a husband who treated her with respect and love. Simple things that once seemed impossibly far away. After the guests left and the girls were tucked into bed, Marcus and Caroline sat on the porch in the gathering darkness. Lightning bugs flickered in the meadow, and somewhere an owl called out its hunting song. The air smelled of pine and coming rain. I got a letter today. Caroline's voice was soft. From Mrs. Fletcher. How is she? Well, she wanted to tell us that the territorial legislature passed a new law. Women who leave abusive husbands can now petition for legal separation without proving abandonment. It's because of what happened. Because of the case we brought against Vincent. Marcus took her hand. That's good. It means something came out of all that pain. It means other women won't have to suffer like I did. Or if they do, they'll have legal recourse. Caroline's voice grew thick with emotion. She said 3 women have already used a new law to escape dangerous situations. 3 families saved because we spoke up. You spoke up. You're the one who had the courage to tell your story. We both did. Caroline squeezed his hand. You gave me the safety to speak, the support to stand up. That mattered just as much. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one. After a while, Caroline spoke again. Do you ever regret it? Taking us in, getting involved in all that trouble, not for a single moment. Marcus turned to look at her, his face serious. You and Clara gave my life meaning again. Gave Morning Star a family. This past year has been the happiest of my life, mine too. Even with all the fear and fighting, even with everything we went through. Caroline rested her head on his shoulder. Because it led us here, the next morning dawned clear and warm. Marcus rose early to tend the horses while Caroline started breakfast. The girls appeared sleepy-eyed, but excited for the day ahead. After they ate, Morning Star took Clara to the barn to work with the young colt while Marcus rode out to check the fence lines on the western boundary. Caroline spent the morning in the garden, planting seeds for the summer vegetables. Her hands worked the soil with practiced ease, and she hummed an old song her mother had taught her. The baby kicked occasionally, as if dancing to the tune. Around midday, a wagon appeared on the road leading to the house. Caroline shaded her eyes against the sun and recognized Mrs. Fletcher driving, with 2 other women from the church. They'd become regular visitors over the past year, bringing news and friendship. Caroline, Mrs. Fletcher climbed down from the wagon with surprising agility for a woman her age. We have wonderful news, the other women, Sarah and Elizabeth, both survivors of abuse who'd found freedom through the new law, smiled broadly. Elizabeth spoke up. The territorial governor wants to meet you. He's coming to Fort Collins next month, and he specifically asked to speak with the woman whose testimony helped change the law. Caroline's hand went to her throat. Me? Why would he want to meet me? Because you're a hero, dear. Mrs. Fletcher took her hands. Your courage inspired others. The governor wants to acknowledge that publicly, maybe even present you with a commendation. I don't need recognition. I just wanted to protect my daughter, and you did. Sarah moved closer. But you also protected dozens of other daughters, sisters, wives. You gave them hope and a legal path to safety. That deserves recognition. Caroline looked back at the house, the life she'd built here. The thought of public attention made her uncomfortable, but she also understood the importance of the gesture. If it helped even one more woman find the courage to leave an abusive situation, it was worth the discomfort. All right. I'll meet with the governor. But I want to bring Marcus and the girls. They're part of this story too, of course, Mrs. Fletcher beamed. We'll make all the arrangements. That evening, Carolyn told Marcus about the governor's visit. He listened quietly, then nodded. You should do it. It's important. You'll come with me. Wouldn't miss it. Though I might need to get some new clothes. Can't meet the territorial governor looking like a dirt farmer. Marcus tried to keep his tone light, but Carolyn heard the pride underneath. You look perfect, exactly as you are. But yes, we'll all get new clothes. Make it a special occasion. Carolyn smiled. Clara will be thrilled. She's never had a fancy dress. The weeks leading up to the governor's visit were filled with preparation. Anna helped Caroline and the girls sew new dresses, teaching them stitches and techniques. Joseph insisted on buying Marcus a proper suit from the best tailor in Fort Collins. The whole community seemed invested in making sure the Red Wing family represented them well. The day of the event arrived warm and sunny. The territorial governor, a dignified man named William Thornton, held a public assembly in the Fort Collins town square. Hundreds of people gathered, curious and supportive. Caroline stood on the platform with Marcus beside her. The girls sitting in the front row with Anna and Joseph. Governor Thornton spoke about the importance of justice, about how the territory was growing, not just in size but in conscience. Then he called Caroline forward and presented her with a formal commendation, a framed document declaring her service to the people of Colorado Territory. Mrs. Redwing, your courage in speaking truth to power has changed lives. Because of you, women across this territory have legal protection they didn't have before. You've helped build a more just society, and we are grateful. The governor shook her hand as the crowd applauded. Caroline accepted the commendation with shaking hands. She hadn't prepared a speech, but looking out at the crowd, seeing the faces of women she'd helped, she found words. I didn't do this alone. My husband Marcus gave me the safety to speak. My daughters gave me the strength to fight. The women of this community gave me their support. And the law gave us all justice. We did this together. More applause, louder this time. Clara beamed from the front row, clearly bursting with pride. Morning Star wiped away tears, understanding the significance, even at her young age. Marcus stood tall, his hand over his heart. After the ceremony, people lined up to meet Caroline. Women thanked her through tears, sharing their own stories of escape and survival. Men apologized for not seeing the signs earlier, promising to do better. Young girls looked at her with awe, seeing someone who'd stood up and won. One woman approached near the end, older and weathered, with scars on her arms that spoke of old violence. She took Caroline's hands and said simply, "Thank you for showing us we don't have to accept cruelty as our fate. You gave me the courage to leave. My daughters are safe now because of you." Caroline hugged her tight, both women crying. Stories like this made everything they'd been through worthwhile. Every cold night hiding, every moment of fear, every painful memory, it had led to this, to freedom and safety for so many. That night, back at the homestead, they celebrated with a feast. Joseph and Anna came, along with Dutch Henderson, Mrs. Fletcher, and a dozen other friends. The table groaned under the weight of food, and the house rang with laughter and music. Marcus pulled Caroline aside during the festivities, leading her out to the porch where they could watch the stars. He held her close, his hand resting on her belly where their son kicked and turned. "I'm proud of you. Beyond words." Marcus's voice was rough with emotion. "What you did today, standing up there and accepting that honor. You've come so far from the woman I found bleeding in the snow. We've both come far." Caroline turned in his arms to face him. "You're not the hollow man you were when we met either. We healed each other, we did. And we're going to keep healing, keep growing, keep building this life together." Marcus kissed her softly. "You, me, our children, our family. That's everything." Inside, they heard Clara's voice raised in song, off-key but enthusiastic. Morning Star joined in, harmonizing perfectly. The sound drifted out into the night, mixing with cricket song and wind through the pines. Caroline rested her head against Marcus's chest, listening to his heartbeat, steady and strong. A year ago, she'd been running for her life, terrified and broken. Now she stood in the home she'd helped build, carrying a child made from love, surrounded by family and friends. The transformation seemed impossible, like something from a storybook, but it was real. Every board in this house, every fence post, every planted seed. All of it real, all of it earned through courage and perseverance and refusing to give up. She'd survived Vincent Hayes, more than survived, she'd defeated him, and in doing so had helped defeat the system that protected men like him. 2 months later, Caroline gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The labor was long but straightforward, with Anna serving as midwife and Marcus holding her hand through every contraction. When the baby finally emerged, red-faced and screaming, Marcus wept openly. "A son. I have a son." He held the tiny bundle with shaking hands, overwhelmed by the miracle of it. What should we name him? Caroline was exhausted but glowing, her hair damp with sweat, her smile radiant. They discussed names for months, but never settled on one. Now looking at his son's face, Marcus knew. Samuel, after my grandfather. The one who taught me to survive, to fight, to never give up, Samuel Redwing. Caroline tested the name. It's perfect. Clara and Morning Star were allowed in to meet their new brother. Clara peered at the baby with intense curiosity. He's so small. Are you sure he's supposed to be that tiny? You were even smaller when you were born. Caroline laughed. He'll grow, can I hold him? Morning Star's eyes were wide with wonder. Marcus carefully transferred the baby to his daughter's arms, showing her how to support the head. Morning Star gazed down at her baby brother, with fierce protective love already evident on her face. I'll teach him everything. How to ride, how to track, how to be strong, and I'll teach him to read. Clara chimed in. And to draw pictures. And to catch frogs. He's very lucky to have such good sisters. Caroline watched her daughters with the baby, her heart so full it ached. The seasons turned, and baby Samuel grew from an infant to a toddler. He had his father's dark eyes and his mother's smile, and he was utterly fearless, much to everyone's constant worry. By his first birthday, he was already trying to climb everything and follow his sisters everywhere. The homestead prospered. Marcus's horse breeding program expanded, and he took on 2 ranch hands to help with the growing operation. Caroline started a small business selling her herbal remedies and baked goods in Fort Collins, her products quickly becoming known for their quality. The girls attended Anna's school and excelled, both showing promise as scholars one evening. Nearly 2 years after that desperate night in the barn, the whole family gathered on the porch to watch the sunset. Clara sat on the steps with a book, reading aloud to Samuel, who listened with the serious expression of someone who understood every word. Morning Star worked on a quilt, her stitches neat and precise. Caroline rocked gently in the chair Marcus had built for her, mending clothes. Marcus leaned against the porch rail, surveying his land. This is what happiness looks like. Marcus thought to himself. Not perfect, not without challenges, but fundamentally good. Built on love and respect and mutual support. A family that chose each other and kept choosing each other every single day, Marcus. Caroline's voice drew him from his thoughts. Come sit with me. He settled into the chair beside hers, taking her hand. Their fingers intertwined automatically, a habit formed through countless evenings just like this one. What are you thinking about? How far we've come? How much has changed? Caroline gestured at the scene before them. 2 years ago, I thought my life was over. I thought Clara and I would die in that snow, alone and forgotten. Now look at us. Now you're surrounded by family, building a legacy, changing laws, saving lives. You're remarkable. We're remarkable. This family, this life we built together. That's what's remarkable. Caroline squeezed his hand. And I want to remember this moment, exactly as it is. All of us together, safe and happy and home. The sun sank lower, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple and gold. The air cooled, bringing the scent of pine and wildflowers. Samuel laughed at something in Clara's story. Morning Star hummed softly as she worked. Somewhere in the distance, Marcus's horses whinnied, settling in for the night. This moment, this perfect moment, would live in all their memories forever. A marker of how far they'd come, how much they'd overcome. Proof that even the darkest winters eventually give way to spring. That courage and love could triumph over cruelty and fear. That broken people could heal if given safety and time, and someone who refused to give up on them. He found a runaway girl hiding in a hayloft, and she led him to her bleeding mother in the snow. What started as a desperate rescue became something far greater. A family forged in crisis, strengthened by adversity, and bound together by choice. They'd fought for each other, bled for each other, and ultimately saved each other. And now, in the golden light of a Colorado sunset, they were finally, truly, completely home.
Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.